Basically, he's saying that he feels like he's heard a lot of Japanese learners that consciously learned pitch accent through System 2. And he feels like there's this thing they often do where when they speak Japanese, the pitch accent drops are kind of too pronounced and like too overemphasized, and it kind of sounds unnatural. So I guess kind of like, what do I think about this? And is this like a real problem or not? So like he specifically asked, like, does the size of the drop not really matter as long as it's consistent on the sentence level or what? So basically, everything basically matters. So if you're doing anything in a way that's not the exact same way that natives do it, it's going to sound off to natives. So, if your drops when you speak Japanese are bigger than the native speakers drops, it's going to sound weird to native speakers. Like anything that's not literally exactly what they do is going to sound off. So yeah, you definitely want the way that you pronounce the pitch accent patterns is to be literally identical or as identical as possible to the native speakers do. Yeah, I haven't noticed this in particular, but that's because I haven't listened to that many Japanese speakers, or I haven't listened to that many Japanese learners that consciously learned pitch. But I can totally see this happening, and I don't doubt that this is a thing at all. It's basically just an example of people basically making up language. Anytime you make up language, or I use the word contrived, J. Marvin Brown used this word to talk about this idea of basically you're making up language. So rather than like getting lots of input, hearing how natives do it, and then just imitating what you're hearing, instead you read a description of what it's supposed to sound like, and you imagine what the description is talking about, and then you say what you imagined up, what you thought up, or what you contrived based on some description. So anytime that you're doing this, that you're making something up based off the description, you're going to be off. And that's just because language is so hyper specific that there's no way that the version that you created based off some description is going to get you right on the target. And I called this idea sound is supreme, meaning if you want to be able to sound like a native speaker, the only way to learn is through sound. Like you can't use your eyes to arrive at what something sounds like. You can't use your like conceptual mind to arrive at something sounds like. The only way to know what something sounds like is to hear it. And I have a video about that on the Project Uproot trial that I think is pretty good. But yeah, any description is just a finger pointing at the moon. It's not the moon itself. The moon itself is sound, and the only way to get there is through your ears, because your ears are the only things that can hear sounds. So it totally makes sense, and it's not surprising at all, that if a Japanese learner watches Dogen's videos about pitch accent, and they haven't got a lot of input, or they haven't done a lot of phonetic training, and then they just start speaking Japanese, and they're like, okay, so according to the video by Dogen that I watched, this part of the word's supposed to be high and this part of the word's supposed to be low, and they're just making up what they think the pitch accent pattern sounds based on a description. Of course, they're not going to pronounce the pattern perfectly as it really is, and it's going to sound weird because they're just making it up based off a description. So of course that's going to happen. And then doing this can actually cause interference, because once you build a habit of saying it away a bunch of times, and that actually can warp your perception. It will sound more like the fake version that you thought it is. Plus, you might just have bad habits that, like, even if you get later input, they don't override the bad habits that you built. So yeah, basically, learning about pitch accent consciously can be a source of interference if what you're doing is learning a little bit and then generating based off the knowledge. What you have to do is acquire the pitch accent patterns, because a pitch accent pattern is not just one thing, right? Like the Atamadaka pitch accent pattern is actually a million different things, right? Because the specific way that the Atamadaka pattern sounds is going to depend on where it is in the sentence, what emotion is being expressed in the sentence, like a million other factors, right? The particular idiolect of that person, like the subtle nuance of what they want to communicate, what register it is, whether it's like casual or more formal, like every single little factor will change the particular way that a Atamadaka pitch accent pattern shows up. But all those things are Atamadaka. So you have to train your brain to develop a three-dimensional model of what the Atamadaka pitch accent pattern is and how particularly it morphs and shifts depending on all the other factors at play, right? Consciously, you can't do that. It's way too complicated, way too many factors at play. You have to basically train your unconscious mind to acquire it and just know what it is intuitively. So the only way that you can do that is through real exposure to the real Japanese, right? Through doing lots of immersion or doing HVPT, which also forces your brain to acquire it, because you create this test environment where the only way to get it right is to be able to hear it, because the test has a ton of variability built in. But ideally both, right? You do both. So if you like learn what the pitch accent pattern is, and then you do tons of training to train yourself to really hear it, and you get tons of exposure, and then when you go to speak, you're not speaking based off of the knowledge, you're speaking based off of the actual pattern that you installed in your brain through real Japanese, then you're going to be able to say it exactly like a native says it, right? It's only when you skip that middle step and you try to go straight from knowledge to saying it that you're going to end up sounding off